Yeah. So yeah, I think 9. 9 o'clock would be perfect.
Well, so we got, I think I saw on the some clergy are going to later in the main room. I'm going to pull Lego bricks out of a bag in your party colours for the random order that you come on. That seems as fair a way of doing it as any. Simply start with, name your party. And
yes, thank you.
if you had to participate... James.
Oh, easy.
Excellent, good. But it's just look human. There was some people.
Where there are spare
Right. Get on time.
Absolutely.
Right. I suggest we just go and check the smilers first. Like,
What's the actual format? So that's the sort of, and
The
then
format is,
well,
you each
I
get
will
2
hover at the
minutes
back.
at
Pete will be in the
beginning,
front row.
Say because anyway. So once introduced, we've got some seats to sit on. It probably knows the way in. We'll stay there. For your opening and closing speeches, stand up and go to the front and be addressing the audience directly. For the questions in between, let's just all stay in our seats and try and make it look slightly more relaxed and casual and chatty. People will come up to ask the questions. So I've got, the questions are fixed in, not fixed, that's right, doesn't it? The questions have been agreed in advance to have a balanced selection from across who are asking them and the subjects. So I will call people out, might ask, there's a couple that I'm asking who will come stand at the side and ask you them there. And again, I'll do the Lego brick thing for each question as to make it a random order. But just stay in your seats. We've got the people on the side aisles, we've got video screens with you on.
And each question.
No, less. Sorry, we're only timing the opening and closing speeches.
Right.
We're trying to get to as many questions as possible.
Yes.
and the question.
From mostly. Look here, you can see there's a podium with a microphone on sideways.
Oh, right.
So I'll call them up and they're there. So the kind of whatever. You were allowed to say that you haven't thought about it. There's arguments both sides, and you don't. That. But policy questions, which are more on the what would you do about this big difficult.
Got this. You go on for a bit longer then, hopefully.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But you'll keep us right.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to All Saints Church. It is a privilege to welcome you all to our church this evening. All Saints has stood at the centre of the Ilkley community here in one shape or another for nearly 1,400 years. And so it's, I think, although I would say that I'm biased, entirely fitting that we have our hustings here this evening. My name is Adam. I'm the curate here at All Saints, but on behalf of all of the team, welcome, and it's a privilege to have you here this evening.
Thank you. And in this double act, one, two. Shall I go from one?
It's on in here.
Said welcome to All Saints Church. I won't do all the history bit because I don't remember that. So my name's Peter Willocks. I'm not the vicar here, but I'm moderator of Churches Together this year, and it's been a great privilege actually trying to get this organised. I can claim none of that organisation, and I just want to give thanks to Adam, to Smilers, who's going to be chairing today, and for Mike Faulkner, who's the Secretary of Churches Together, for really getting all this together. And also a big thanks to those who've been working on the tech desk to get this streamed, and now for you to hear, hopefully, in good sound. If you have a hearing aid, as the sign mentioned earlier, there is a loop system, so if you can tune into that, then please do. I think that's probably all I need to say for the moment.
No, red light means it's working, in theory.
How are we doing for our image of professional, being a well-oiled machine here at All Saints? Let me say again what I said at the start. Welcome. It is great to have you all here at All Saints this evening. My name is Adam, and I'm the curate here at All Saints Church. Just to add on to what Pete said, thank you to everyone who's helped to make our hustings happen this evening, and we hope it's a wonderful time for you to learn and find out more about who you would like to have as our next MP in the constituency of Keighley and Ilkley. Just one or two more housekeeping issues. We're not expecting a fire drill or anything like that this evening, so if the fire alarm does go off, it's either the real thing or the second coming. So emergency exits are in that corner, and there's one out in that corner as well. Please do choose the nearest one to you, remembering that that might be behind you. Thank you for taking advantage of our tea and coffee as well. If you get caught short as a result of our tea and coffee or otherwise, bathrooms are out that door at the back, at the end of the corridor and on the right. And there's a disabled access bathroom there and half a dozen other non-disabled access bathrooms at the bottom of the stairs. Is there anything else I think we need to say? No? I'll hand over to Pete then to introduce Smilers, our chair.
So I want to say a thank you as well to our candidates who've come, because for you coming here helps us to engage in the political process, which is really important all the time. And I do ask that people, needless to say in a way, that we hold this in a civil way. If you feel the need to shout, I would suggest that you might go outside and do it in a corner, just so that everyone else can hear and everything's in good order. But his name's been mentioned a couple of times. We thought long and hard about who should chair, and we felt that Smilers did a really good job of it last time. For those who don't know Smilers, that's his nickname, but he likes to be known as that, so for tonight that's how he's going to be known. So I'm going to pass on to Smilers as he chairs today.
No need to clap me. Right. So, is this microphone working now? Works when I hold it, but not when a member of the clergy does. That's interesting. Right, we are in a church, so let's start with a prayer. Lord, thank you that we live in a democracy. Help us to appreciate that and not take it for granted. Please bless this event and all those here this evening. Amen. Okay, we've got the candidates here ready to come on. I'm obviously neutral. I've got a T-shirt with as many party colours on as possible. I've even got Scottish National Party, even though they never seem to stand in Ilkley. And what I've got here is a bag of building bricks so that we can do things in random order without any favouritism to any candidate or party. So, Red, can we have the first candidate on stage, please? That's a lot of clapping for just walking on stage. So our icebreaker question this year is, if you had to participate on a TV or radio quiz, game show or contest, which would you choose? The MPs have done well at shows from Only Connect and University Challenge to Britain's Best Home Cook. There's also some that have tried diving, singing, dancing and skating. So, what is your name, which party do you represent and which game show?
I'm John Grogan. I'm the Labour Party candidate for Keighley and Ilkley. And I'm going to stretch the question a bit. I would like to be the lunchtime guest on Test Match Special. That would be
John Grogan, thank you. Take a seat. White. Hello. Name, party, and radio or TV show. Well, name and party first.
Dominic Atlas. I am the Yorkshire Party candidate. And
What, which TV quiz or contest or radio?
I'll definitely do Pointless.
Pointless. Excellent. Thank you very much for Dominic Atlas. Okay. Blue.
Blue. Right, well, that's you.
I think some people might have recognised you even before you said your name. So, name, party, and TV or radio show.
Well, good evening, everyone. Robbie Moore, the Conservative Party candidate. I would probably go with Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, only because I hope I'm not going to have to ask the audience or phone a friend tonight, but...
Thank you. It's the colour that's left over for the candidate that doesn't really have one. So, not a big fan of limes or anything. Right, name.
I'm Vaz Shabir. I'm the independent candidate, and I'd like to go to Countdown.
Thank you. So, hopefully... Oh, hang on. There we go. Mic's up. In the other shade of blue,
Indeed.
we have...
I'm Andrew Judson. I'm the Reform Party candidate for Keighley and Ilkley.
And TV or radio quiz contest?
It's got to be the Chase.
The Chase. Thank you very much. Personally, I was hoping that you'd all go for just a minute to avoid any repetition, hesitation or deviation. But I'm glad that none of you went for the Unbelievable Truth, the show where you have to mostly lie and just smuggle in a few truths. So thank you to all our candidates. So the format is we're going to come to questions in a bit, but each of them get to make an opening statement of whatever it is that they most want to say. So I'm going to put the bricks back in. And white. So Dominic Atlas, take the floor. We've got 2 minutes. Are yours. Peter down there is timing the 2 minutes.
Okay. Hello, everyone, again. So, the Yorkshire Party has been around since 2015, and our main policy is that we want to be devolutionised from centralised Parliament. London get £2,700 per head more than Yorkshire, as does Scotland and other regions of the UK. That equates to £14 billion plus more than Yorkshire. And as a result, we're seeing the closure of precious commodities around the area for lack of funding, schooling systems dropping, the educational system failing other children, with the special educational needs children suffering the most. In recent years, we've seen a decline in exam results in Yorkshire, and it's something that I feel quite strongly about, making sure that those children in school today, be it from primary school all the way up to secondary school and higher education, the ones that are potentially going to lead this country in the future are those that have the best educational system going. And the only way we can do that in the Yorkshire Party's mind is by complete devolution from centralised government and making what we call Yorkshire Parliament, so that we have control over our educational system, our NHS system, our public transport system, and any other type of public services in the area, so that they can get proper funding based on the taxes and all other income that Yorkshire brings in that are stolen from centralised government and given to other areas of the UK. The Yorkshire Party's belief is that there is no longer a need in today's age for a centralised government, and that all areas of the United Kingdom should be devolutionised to be able to give more effort to their respected regions. Thank you.
Thank you to Dominic. Right, so next, Andrew Judson.
Good evening all. Thank you for letting me come and speak to you this evening. Right, 2 minutes. Reform. It would appear we're not particularly liked with the new kids on the block, but what we've got to say is this. We cannot keep going from one party to another party like we've been doing for the last 100 years. We now need a change. We now need a change to stand up against Bradford Council. We now need a change to stand up against government. I'm not going to need all of the 2 minutes. I want your vote because I want to be the voice of opposition. I want to be able to stand up for you and speak for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew Judson. Next up, Vaz Shabir.
Hi. For me, I think the two-party system in the United Kingdom is broken. What we've had is 14 years of austerity from the Conservatives, and many of us who actually live here locally, who have been governed by Labour, are certainly not too thrilled with having Keir Starmer as our Prime Minister too. So we're left with this kind of flux on not knowing where to go. And I myself became politically homeless a few months ago, and it was mainly due to the cause of Gaza for me, and I was appalled by our country's action. A lot of people said, look, Gaza is a million miles away. Why are you bringing it locally here? And I think it is a local issue, and I'll tell you why. Because for me, if we actually spend our money locally, we don't seem to have any money for any schools, the NHS is broken, our roads are tattered, we're paying obscene amount of council tax, but we've always seemed to have money to go fight in wars abroad. So I, personally, it made me kind of question everything and the hypocrisy that we have. And I want to stand as independent because all these guys here represent their parties. As an independent, I want to be, you guys are my party. So your concerns would be my concerns. I wouldn't have a chief whip to tell me what to do. I wouldn't have any person to follow. And because I think many of us, when it comes to politics, we're not always the same. Like for me, I'm left-wing on humanitarian issues, but I'm also socially conservative. And many people, when they look at our party, don't always agree with it. I think we need more local representation. I was born in this constituency. My son was born in this constituency. My nana is buried in this constituency. I'm not parachuted in, and I intend to represent the people.
Vaz Shabir. Thank you. Okay, Robbie Moore, your 2 minutes.
Well, good evening, everybody. And I can't believe that 4.5 years has gone by since I was stood on this platform 4.5 years ago. And I can't thank you enough back then for putting your faith in me. Now, I have made it my mission over the last 4.5 years to be your most active MP in a generation, putting your priorities first and working on those priorities as hard as I can and as best as I feel fit, along with my core values aligned with the Conservative Party. Now, it's not been easy. No MP is an expert on everything. But over the last 4.5 years, I feel that I've put my blood, sweat and tears into this job to make sure that your voice, your local voice, whether it is here in Ilkley or Keighley or Silsden, the Wirth Valley, is heard. And I think we've made some good progress on local issues, whether it's been securing the funding for the Airedale Hospital or making sure that we're drawing down a huge amount of investment, ring-fenced for our community, so we can make sure that we're driving forward positive growth in our local communities. Now, one thing that I can absolutely give to you over the next 5 years is my energy, enthusiasm and commitment for driving forward things that matter here in this constituency. And I want to build on the great work that I've done so far, making sure your voice is heard, whether it is holding the local authority to account or the government to account, because that is what your constituency MP should be doing, making sure that your voice and your priorities are focused on. So if I'm lucky enough to be re-elected on the 4th of July, and you have a clear choice, either I will continue being your MP or you will have Labour as your MP. And that is what your choice is. And I hope that I'm lucky enough to continue putting my hard work into representing you over the next 4 to 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Robbie Moore. Right, it's the red brick. So, John Grogan.
This is my 9th general election. I've won 4 and lost 4, so I reckon this is a decider, really. And if you look back at the period before when I started fighting elections, look back over the last 100 years in our country, there was probably 3 occasions when, looking back, we had a really radical reforming government. 1906, before the Labour Party was even formed in Ilkley, the Liberals got a landslide, brought in old age pensions, curbed the power of the Lords. 1945, there was a chap called Major Dennis Healy who went on to be Labour Chancellor of the Exchequer later on. He was the candidate here in Ilkley, and he just lost, but Labour won and we brought in the health service. And of course, 1997, when we got the wonderful Anne Cryer as our MP here, and we got things like the minimum wage, peace in Ireland, and all of those things. And it's not certain, nothing is certain, but there is a chance of having a similar radical progressive moment in our politics. But I need to persuade you tonight that if you want more teachers in our schools, more doctors and nurses in our hospitals, more police on our streets, you have to vote Labour. If you want a more sensible adult relationship with Europe, you have to vote Labour. If you want to take net zero seriously, you have to vote Labour. If you want a government which is going to have a stable economic policy where everyone counts, where everyone has decent employment rights, then you have to vote Labour. And I would appeal particularly to those of you who are green, a liberal or progressive disposition, please lend me your vote. It is always close in Keighley and Ilkley. 5 times since the war, it's been less than 1,000 votes. I want a society, I want a Keighley and Ilkley where nobody is left behind and nobody is held back. Thank you.
Thank you, John Grogan. Thank you to all 5 of you there. I want to vote for all of you now. All saying good things. So we're now going to have some questions. We've got this in 3 sections. To start with, some more general questions about parties and MPs. Then we're going to have a speed round of very quick, just do you agree, disagree with type things. And then at the end, some longer, more discursive policy questions that might involve a bit more thinking. We're going to stay seated. We're not going to put the timer on you. We're just going to trust you to, answer it sensibly as that is intended. Tom Franks, you're on next. I'm going to ask a question first, but just to let you know that you're coming up. If I call you to ask a question, can you please come to the microphone that is there? You'll be sort of sideways onto the audience and the candidates as a compromise, so not having your back to anybody. And thank you, everybody who submitted questions. We had far too many to be able to use them all. It was agonising to have to have good questions that didn't make it through. The reason I'm asking a couple is some of them we merged or edited or changed the angle of, so they're based on what people have sent in, but no longer one person's specific question. but everything I say are from questions that have been submitted by people in this constituency. And the first one we've got is that it may be that who is chosen as the MP for Keighley and Ilkley doesn't affect which party is in government. It may be they could win without the votes of this constituency. Should people vote based on policies and which party they nationally like and would like in government, or for which candidate they would most want as their local MP? So that's the question. And first up, it is Dominic again. Sorry.
So, I think it is incredibly important to vote both ways. So vote for the candidate that you want to represent you as a constituent, and vote for a candidate of someone you want in centralised parliament as well. The Yorkshire Party is an incredibly small party where we don't hold enough seats within Yorkshire to ever take Prime Minister. That isn't our intention in the slightest. It is to get devolution. And when you're voting, so for instance, in Keighley, there's always been this two-party fight between the Labour and the Conservatives. And
we'll come into that in a minute. But,
okay. And ultimately, it's up to you guys to decide whether or not you want someone who will work hard in all aspects of being an MP, be that locally and centralised government, and someone that will only want half of the job. So one of them that will only work for the constituents, or someone will only work in the central government.
Thank you, Dominic. Right. Robbie Moore, so the same question. Should people vote based on national parties or just who they want as a local MP?
Well, ultimately, you're choosing your constituency MP. So you're having the opportunity to choose who you want to represent you and who you feel is going to champion your causes and work for you and make sure things get done at a local level. So I would urge you, as I would in any constituency, make your choice based on who you think is going to work the hardest for you in Parliament, championing your causes here in Ilkley and our wider area in Parliament and making sure that your voice is heard.
Thank you. Andrew Judson.
I've got to mirror what Robbie just said. Yes, you need to be voting for somebody who's going to be representing your constituency to the best of their ability. Somebody that will stand up and shout for you and make sure you get what you want and hold those organisations to account for when they step on your toes and do anything. So yes, you should be going for somebody who you trust, somebody who fills you with confidence. Nationally, we're looking a little bit broader. We really need to be concentrating just at the moment on what you want for this town, and you need to go with the person who makes you feel most confident. So yes.
So Vaz Shabir.
I think you should look at the individual, yes, but for me, I think it's really important we get away from the two mainstream parties. I think I want to fight for proportional representation. It's completely unfair. Labour are looking like getting 40% of the national vote, and some polls are saying they're going to get 450 seats because of it. And where the Liberal Democrats can get 10% of the vote and get 70 seats, the Green Party can get 10% and get 4 seats. I don't think that is real representation. So I think, for me, this election is saying no to both Labour and Conservatives and voting for the smaller parties so we can champion the need for proportional representation.
Thank you. John Grogan.
Well, Vaz, I agree with you on electoral reform, by the way, and that's one of the reasons I want to go back into Parliament to argue for it. But I'll let you into a secret. I don't think Keir's going to be putting me in the cabinet if he gets into power. And I myself have said that I do not want to be on the front bench because there's a lot to do here in Keighley and Ilkley, and I want to do that. But I also want to have the ability to speak out on local and international and national issues without fear or favour. But I would be very, very proud to support a Labour government under Keir Starmer because I think we are now at a stage where we definitely need a change in our country.
Thank you. Tom Franks, you to come and ask your question.
Thank you. Good evening. Our first past the post election system can result in great power from a minority of votes, and many people feeling that their vote is wasted. how would you reform the voting system to ensure a fair distribution of power and so that everybody feels that their vote is not wasted?
Thank you. You can stay there and glare at them while they answer, or you can go back to your seat. It's your choice. But we should have a declaration of interest, because some people will recognise Tom Franks. So, go on. Who are you, or were you?
Yes, I'm a Lib Dem member from way back, and I did in fact stand as the Lib Dem candidate in 2019, so I was with some of our colleagues here. I'm slightly sorry not to be there again, but other parts of me think I'm very happy not to be there.
Thank you. Some people who's going to recognise Tom's had wanted it to be open to make sure everybody did. So, we have got Vaz. Can you take voting reform then, please?
Yes, I mean, I've just mentioned it, but I think this is paramount. There's lots of people who do feel their vote is wasted. There's a large section of this constituency in Keighley, the Muslim vote and the left-wing vote, who don't want to vote for these two people because they don't see much difference between Keir Starmer and John was talking about wonderful radical policies or radical government. We're certainly not seeing that with Keir Starmer. It's very much part of the same establishment and austerity. I believe that we should have a more proportional system. If it's full PR, it can lead to chaos. I know people can say they won't have a full government, like in Italy. I think they had 45 governments in 50 years before 1998. But I think there is a system where you can use the additional member system, which is a bit of PR, and then would still be a little bit more representative, and you can get a government that is functioning.
Thank you. Robbie Moore.
So I'm a big in favour of first past the post, and the reason for that is because I think generally, regardless of political party that's in charge, it leads to strong government on the whole, because you have a decisive majority particularly, and that allows a government of whatever the political makeup to make some bold policy decisions. And the reason I'm not supportive of PR is because I think it actually takes control out of the electorate, because when you go to the ballot box, you know, if you put a cross next to a candidate, the person who gets the most votes wins. But when you have a proportional representation system, you inevitably end up with a system that's a little bit similar to what we would have like in Germany or elsewhere in some other European countries, where it then effectively comes down to horse deal trading by the political parties once the votes are cast. And it might be that the party that gets the most votes doesn't end up forming government. And therefore, you as the electorate has less control and less say of who effectively would end up in number 10.
Thank you. John Grogan.
Well, firstly, Tom, we miss you. We miss you on the platform. I'm a big believer in electoral reform. I think you've got to keep the constituency system, because that is very effective at bringing local concerns and so on. And that does happen in Scotland and Germany. You vote for your constituency MP. You know who he or she is at the end of the election. But then there is a top-up. And that adds more fairness, that allows smaller parties to be represented. If you look at most of our neighbours, they have some sort of system of a more proportional nature. I think it's coming, and I think the next parliament is the ideal parliament to debate this and to set up a system to take the country forward in the following decades.
Thank you. Andrew Judson.
Difficult one. Proportional representation is the way I would go. You get much more a balance of what the electorate actually want in this country. Too many times have we seen parties that have had 5, 6, 7 million votes but no seats. So that 6, 7 million votes have just been completely ignored by government. There is nobody to stand for them. So I do believe that proportional representation is the way forward, but on the downside, there's a possibility that the candidate that is actually proposed for this area, under proportional representation, you may not get a person that actually agrees with your area, or may not even be from your area, because they're going to be sent around. But I think proportional representation is the way to go forward. It's fair on everybody.
Thank you. Dominic Atlas.
So, my friend, one of my very dear friends, said to me a couple of weeks ago when he found out I was standing, he went, "Dom, I really want to vote for you. It's a bit of a wasted vote, isn't it?" And I said to him, no. The only wasted vote is a vote not used. Because you can go out and you can vote for any one of the parties, and then you're growing the percentage of that party, which means you're growing the knowing of it within centralised government. And that's where, say, for instance, the West Yorkshire Mayor came about because the Yorkshire Party were getting more and more votes, so they introduced the West Yorkshire Mayor to try and see if that type of devolution would help to stem the tide of what the people of West Yorkshire was voting for. Ultimately, there is a massive error in the system, which is that all the power centralises in London. We need a council or a body of people in Yorkshire for Yorkshire. That's the only way to get our issues solved, is by people living here helping to sort the issue together, not one person running the show, a whole group of people ensuring that everyone's needs are met in all areas of Yorkshire.
Thank you, Dominic. I'm feeling slightly there after Vaz gave the answer to the second question in his first one, that you've given the answer to the next question. Is it a Two Ronnies sketch where people keep answering the questions before they... I feel like I've been set up here. So we've got... Thank you, Tom. We've got another question which we've sort of sanitised from the way it was submitted. This is just to Andrew Judson, Dominic Atlas and Vaz Shabir. There are other questions that the other two of you get just for you. It will balance out. And the reason for that is, in a constituency which historically is marginal between Labour and Conservative, why are you standing and risking splitting the vote of people who have a preference between those two? Right, you're not being asked that question. It is... Dominic, you've sort of just answered that already, so you don't need to repeat yourself.
I don't really need to repeat myself, but I do want to add something to it. As I said in the first question, actually, Keighley and Ilkley have always been this two-party argument where the Labour and the Conservative have argued over us. At the moment, we have a Labour-run council with a Conservative MP, and it's ripping the area apart because no decisions can be made when the two people are never willing to agree with each other. And that is why voting for the likes of like the Yorkshire Party, who are there for the region and just the region, is more beneficial because we want the best for Yorkshire and not centralised government.
Thank you. Andrew Judson.
Just repeat the question again.
Hang on, I've already put the piece of paper down. In a constituency historically marginal between Labour and Conservative, other candidates standing risks splitting the vote of people who have a preference between the two bigger parties.
If we don't do it now, we're never going to do it. It's always going to be two parties. We've got to now look at the big picture. If it stays this way like it's been for 100 years, what's going to change? It's going to be backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards. I'm not trying to split the vote. I'm trying to get your vote. I'm wanting to put reform in power in this area. I'm wanting reform to be in power in the country. But I think you've got to do something now. This is the time that everything's changing. As Nigel says, this is changing. So this is what I think needs to happen. You need to start voting away from the main two parties.
Thank you. And Vaz Shabir, same question to you.
Yeah, I'm standing because there's a lot of our people in this constituency who are verging on the left and the Muslim vote that feel completely politically homeless when it comes to Keir Starmer's Labour and the Conservative Party. So there was a lot of token people actually not voting at all. So I'm standing to give thousands of people in Keighley someone to vote for. We believe that both of these two parties are complicit in the genocide in Gaza, and we want to make a stance to say enough is enough. So I'm standing because of that main reason. Because otherwise, they would have no one to vote for. I don't want them to throw the vote in the bin.
Thank you. Just say, you may wish to respond to the questions that didn't go to you. Once you've all had questions that haven't gone to others, we'll do a bit where you can just go along and anybody can respond to the other bits in case you feel you want to come in on that. So we are now on to the speed round. So even faster answers, just often factual ones as to whether you agree with something or not long discursive ones. I've got the first question on my clipboard, but queuing up Penny Brosnan to come and answer the next one. The first one, in fact, this is just to Robbie Moore, somebody who didn't volunteer to ask the question themselves, but put through, would you be happy to remain in a Conservative Party that had amalgamated with Reform and with Nigel Farage fulfilling his stated ambition to become Prime Minister? It's a yes-no question.
Well, I don't think it's going to happen.
Good answer.
Okay, thank you very much. Penny Brosnan. There they go. So.
My question is for Mr. Grogan. So given that you're standing in a northern constituency, I was wondering how you could justify the VAT on school fees, which are disproportionately going to affect northern working class pupils the most.
I would justify VAT on private school fees because we only have a certain amount of money in our country and we have to give tax breaks very, very sparingly, and we would use the 1.3 billion that we would raise from VAT on private and independent schools to do things like have more teachers in mainstream schools where 95% of pupils go, to have free breakfast clubs in every primary school in Keighley, and to have more nursery classes as well. So you've got to make choices in politics. It's perfectly reasonable for parents to choose private education, independent education for their children, but to avoid the taxation, I don't think can be justified in our country in this century when 95% of people are in the state sector.
Thank you. And thank you, Penny. So it's Craig Sanderson next, if you can come up, please, and Paul Johnson after Craig. Is Craig here? Oh, yeah.
Thank you and good evening. It's a long way from the back. When I drive to work, I leave home at 5:30 in the morning. I have to drive all the way to Sheffield. Is it fair that I'm subjected to harsh speed bumps and a 20-mile-an-hour zone, even though there are no pedestrians around at that time of day, and especially no school children? What are the candidates' positions on speed bumps, 20-mile-an-hour zones, especially where local communities clearly do not want them?
Okay. First out the bank, Andrew.
Yes, made a few notes on this one. Right, so...
Speed round, remember.
I'll be very, very quick, very quick.
Mainly quick. Just, are you for favour or against speed bumps?
So, right, so... First of all, I'm sat in a room with millionaires. You all know that. You're all millionaires. According to Bradford Council, you are anyway. So therefore, they're going to want all your money. So the way I look at it is, I would much rather have seen all that money go into fixing your speed bumps. Take it out your speed bumps, fix your potholes. And what I've got to say about that one is what's coming next. So I don't think this should have been put in at all. It's just another case of Labour-run Bradford Council ignoring every single thing that Ilkley have asked for and wanted. And they're just saying, they're walking all over you. So we can't have that. But what's going to be next? We've heard Angela Rayner say it's coming to every town, referring to ULEZ and clean air zones. Heaven forbid, low traffic neighbourhoods or pay per mile. So what's going to be next if we allow Bradford Council to roughshod over you every single time you want something done, and you've got a referendum saying you don't want it, they go ahead and do it anyway. So that's that.
Thank you. It is good to have such a politically engaged audience, but please try not to talk over the candidates. Whether you are cheering or booing, it means other people can't hear what the candidates are saying. It can affect people who are trying to watch online, but also it's important. If one of these people gets elected, we want to have the record of what it is that they said. So thank you for your enthusiasm, but try to contain yourself. If you really feel like you can't actually listen without making loud noises, we are on YouTube. You could go and watch it elsewhere. Right, this question is about 20-mile-an-hour zones and speed bumps. John Grogan, speed round.
Quickly, the fact is Ilkley is bitterly and deeply divided on this issue. Councillor Ros Brown, who is the Green councillor who was elected just very recently, she was the principal architect of it, and that shows how divided we are. I think I support speed bumps across the particular parts of the country. Now, 30 million people live in areas where we have a 20-mile-per-hour speed limit. The plain fact is that if you have an accident and you're going 20 miles per hour, compared with an accident at 30 miles per hour, you're 5 times less likely to cause a serious accident or a death. And we've got to think of the safety of our children and encouraging pedestrians in our town as well as motorists. And that difficult balance, I think, is what we've got to aim for.
Thank you, John Grogan. Robbie Moore.
So I've always been very clear on this issue in that I support targeted speed reduction schemes at where there are hotspots, i.e. outside schools or dealing with that complicated junction at the top of Cow Pasture Road where there's that roundabout and that junction. But what we have got is effectively the local authority rolling out a scheme with the support of Ilkley Town Council that nobody wanted, effectively. The vast majority of people in Ilkley, at a public poll, said that they did not want a blanket, town-wide, 20-mile-an-hour speed reduction scheme with over 100 speed humps. But unfortunately, what we've got is that speed reduction scheme being rolled out and constructed right now. And all of you, every time you're driving over those speed humps, should be thinking, well, that money should have been better spent on repairing the roads and the potholes rather than putting in these speed humps in areas, let's be frank, that don't need it, do not need that speed reduction scheme. And the final thing to say is this scheme only went ahead because there was a financial contribution awarded to the scheme by Ilkley Town Council. And I've got residents over in Keighley that are crawling out for a speed reduction scheme, that need it. But unfortunately, you've got one, and you didn't want one, but that's Bradford Council for you.
Thank you, Robbie. Vaz Shabir.
Yeah, John said the town was divided on it. I've actually had 5 emails from people who live in Ilkley to talk about this very issue and where I stand on it. So I can actually say that they were all against it. I personally against this bureaucracy myself. And if it's been imposed on people by the Bradford Council, more likely than not, it was probably a bad choice. So I definitely stand against it and would be helping the residents in removing this burden.
Thank you, Vaz Shabir. Dominic Atlas.
So I am for and against because...
Excellent. Good. Right, next question.
I like to be a thorn in my council side to get 20 zones and speed humps put into Keighley themselves, but I am also a bus driver. I work for Keighley Bus Company and I drive the 62 into Ilkley all the time. And it took me months to realise they'd turned it into a 20 zone. But I personally feel that it is incredibly important to have every single school zone 20 zoned with speed cameras because every child deserves to be safe when going to school. Any other area, it needs to be on what you guys want. If you want it, put it in. If you don't, leave alone.
Thank you, Dominic Atlas. Right, Paul Johnson, we have your question next, please. And Howard Scaife, if you can be poised to come up after Paul.
Good evening. We've had 5 Prime Ministers in the last 14 years. Which of them do you think has been the best? And which of them do you think has been the worst? The question to all of you.
Well, just the question got a laugh, you know, and not even any answers. Right, OK, let's mix the bag up here. And Andrew Judson.
This is going to make me so unpopular. Right, that's a damn good question.
You can do either worst or best first.
See, there's a lot of people that don't like her, but she didn't last very long, so we've got to take Liz Truss and just put her to one side, I'm afraid. I don't think Rishi's done a bad job in the time that he's had. He's had a few problems, but I don't agree with what the government is trying to do. Boris, in all fairness, I don't think he did a particularly bad job. Out of all the Prime Ministers we've had lately, the one that I strongly am against is Tony Blair. I was never a fan of him.
Last 14 years, though.
Oh, Conservative, did you say? I do apologise.
Yeah, there's been 5 just in 14 years.
Right. So, in all fairness, Theresa May had the right idea, but she bottled it. David Cameron had the right idea, and he bottled it. So, I think the best one would probably have to be, from my point of view, Boris, and the worst one would have to be Liz.
Thank you. And you've now listed and gone through all 5 of them, so hopefully for the other 4 candidates, you've done your thinking in your head, and we can just have an answer of worst and best. And next up, Robbie Moore.
Yeah, well, it doesn't give me any pleasure sitting here, having been here 4.5 years, and now we're on our 3rd Prime Minister in the time that I've been your MP. Of course, it does not give me any pleasure in saying that. But I think we've got to absolutely recognise the level of support that Rishi Sunak, as our Prime Minister, has put into helping as many businesses, as many individuals, all the way through the pandemic, as an excellent Chancellor. And now his attention to detail on the policies. I've never seen somebody having sat in number 10, round the cabinet table, at 6:30 in the morning, on your behalf, going through the level of detail of policy that he's wanting to roll out. And this is an individual that deeply cares about the future of this country. And the Prime Minister has my full support.
Thank you. Are you going to dodge the worst question?
Oh, was there a word? Well, yeah, I'm going to dodge it.
Right. John Grogan.
I think Theresa May is a very decent person and obviously battled against the different factions in her party, but she's a cricket fan, by the way, as well, so that makes it warms her to me. But I think of the 5, she was the most decent. And I have to say, you know, standards in public life, decency, even sort of corruption and so on. I think Boris Johnson destroyed many of the values in our public life during his time here, and I think he was the worst.
Vaz Shabir.
It's like asking someone if you want a bunion on your left cheek or their right cheek, but it's been difficult. But I would say, for me, on a personal level, I think Rishi Sunak, not because of his policy, but to show what a progressive nation we are, I was exceptionally proud that we had a brown man who became our Prime Minister. The worst has to be Liz Truss, because not only single-handedly, I've never seen a woman ruin a country in 41 days, and be rewarded so handsomely for it, £115,000 a year for life as a pension. Not bad for 41 days worth of work, so yeah, them two.
Thank you. Dominic Atlas.
Yeah, I think it's impossible to pick the best one because Yorkshire has received nothing from any of them.
Okay.
And the best and the worst one, I really do feel sorry for Rishi Sunak. I couldn't imagine not having to grow up without Sky TV. And Liz Truss, well, how many people can say a lettuce lasted longer than you? So I would say Liz Truss was the worst one we had.
Thank you. So now, Howard Scaife.
Thank you for coming. The doctors are on strike again today, wanting 35% pay increase. Yeah, I think that conflicts with the Hippocratic Oath. Do you think that doctors should be allowed to strike? Thank you.
So, Andrew Judson, should doctors be allowed to strike?
Ooh, any doctors in? I'd have to say yes, but I won't be happy about saying yes.
Okay, thank you. Dominic Atlas.
It's everyone's right to want to earn the correct amount of money for their profession that they're chosen to be in. But in my opinion, experience in the NHS comes with more money. Junior doctors shouldn't necessarily be striking for such an increase in wage when they are exactly that, junior doctors, and you've got years of experienced doctors that and all you need to do is work up and get the experience and you get the money.
Thank you. Vaz Shabir.
Yes, I support them. I think they should be given the pay increase. These are the people who we rely on. And what's going to end up happening is they're going to go to America or Australia where they're going to get more pay. They spent all these years basically getting educated. They should be rewarded for it.
Robbie Moore.
Yeah, thank you. I absolutely think that there needs to be a minimum level of service, an expectation from our, whether it's our doctors or any other public service provision. And because it has dramatic effects. At Airedale Hospital alone, there was 3,500 appointments cancelled as a result of strikes. Now, the junior doctors that are on strike at the moment are wanting over 30% increase. It's unreasonable. And the government are not supporting that and want to have a reasonable settlement with them. And I don't think the Labour Party support that level of increase either. So there has to be a position which is pragmatic, and then solutions can be reached. And all other settlements have been reached apart from the junior doctor strike. But should there be a minimum level of service? Absolutely yes, because it's having a direct impact on all of us here in this constituency.
Thank you. John Grogan.
Yes, the doctors do have the right to strike, and you're right, not just the strike, but the cuts and so on are having great implications at Airedale. There are people on trolleys and so on waiting to be seen. So what needs to happen is hopefully in 12 days' time, there will be a new health secretary who on that Monday morning will get the doctors' representatives in there. You're right, Robbie, it's not going to be 30% pay rise because the country can't afford it, but there's a lot you can talk about in terms and conditions. And if you look back at the history of Labour governments, you find very few doctors and nurses strikes under Labour governments because we treat the health service seriously and we treat the people who work in it seriously as well.
Thank you. Okay, last question in the speed round, and I'm going to read it out. The person who submitted it said that they didn't want to have to come up and speak in public. It's another environmental one. We had more questions about the environment than any other topic. And actually, the only question we had on tax, which often seems to dominate national politics, was the one about VAT on schools. So just in terms of what seems to be of interest to people here. To reduce the use of fossil fuels, would you commit to amending building regulations so new build homes and commercial buildings are fitted with solar panels, adequate insulation and heat pumps? John Grogan, can you take that first, please?
Yes.
Excellent, thank you. That's the spirit of the speed round. Yes. Andrew Judson.
Yes, within reason.
Thank you. Dominic Atlas?
Yes.
Right. Anonymous person, you might actually be the most popular, here. Vaz Shabir.
As we are aptly sat in the church, as we are the stewards of this wonderful land that God has given us, certainly yes.
Finally, Robbie Moore.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, excellent. Right. No. Everybody agreeing on those? So, building regulations for greener new builds, all round popular. Becky Malby, can we have your question, please? So that's the end of the speed round. Some of these are a bit thinkier, looser, and you can be more discursive on.
Becky Malby, chair of the Ilkley Clean River campaign. I like the idea of the first thinky question. Untreated sewage is being discharged into our rivers in staggering amounts. Over 3.5 million hours of raw sewage discharges into rivers last year. 75% of British rivers are in poor ecological health. Will you stop pollution for profit and enforce the Water Industry Act 1994 to stop sewage pollution outside of exceptional circumstances for all rivers in the UK?
Thank you, Becky. Dominic Atlas.
So it is an absolute travesty that sewage is being dumped into our rivers. We have some of the most beautiful landscape in the area, and the fact that it's been destroyed by sewage being dumped in there is absolutely heartbreaking. Ultimately, what we need to do is we need to have much stronger and tougher rules on it. I would go as far as to say no sewage dumped at all anywhere, because again, it's destroying our landscape. And the other thing, second, what am I saying? What I would definitely be doing is I'd be making those that dump the sewage go out and clean it up and make them pay for it out of their own pocket and their own profits.
Robbie Moore.
So there are key pieces of legislation that are really important. The Water Industry Act 91, the Environment Act 2021 that we voted on and brought into play a few years ago, and also the government's plan for water, which is about more investment, stronger regulation and tougher enforcement. And there have been some huge pieces of work that the government have done over the last few years. So making sure that our regulators, whether it's the Drinking Water Inspectorate, the Ofwat, the financial regulator, or the Environment Agency, have the powers that they need. So what have we done about it? Well, we now know the scale of the problem. Back in 2010, only 7% of storm overflows were actually monitored. Now we're at 100% monitoring. So we now know the scale of the problem and therefore who to hold to account. We've made sure that Ofwat has the ability, as a financial regulator, to link environmental performance to dividend payments. We've made sure that any chief executive or those that sit on a board of a water company will not receive a bonus should there be a serious pollution incident. We've made sure that that there is a huge amount of investment going in to water companies, whether it's directly through the level of expectation that shareholders need to be put in, like we have seen here in Ilkley, whether it's the £50 million sewage capacity increase that they've put on under the A65, or the additional £38 million work that they're doing just next to the water treatment works. We've also made sure that we've removed the cap on penalties. There was a cap of £250,000. It's now been raised to an unlimited amount. And we've also ring-fenced the amount of that penalties to be spent specifically on improving water quality measures within a geographical area of where that fine came from, and an expectation on water companies that they have to clean up their act where there has been a sewage spill that is not within their environmental permit requirements. We've also made sure that we are taking a catchment-wide approach, and there are certain catchments that are far worse than others, like the River Wye, where we've put £12 million specifically in the River Wye to address things like nitrate, phosphorus runoff. And we've also rolled out an additional 27 bathing water sites. And I was proud to do that, actually, as the Water Minister, using a lot of the learning that I had, and I hope Becky wouldn't mind me saying this, through the interaction with the Ilkley Clean River Group. Because there were some key measurables that the Clean River Water Group said to me that we need to address. If there is a bathing water designation, and I'm pleased that we managed to get the one here, the first one on a river on the River Wharf here in the UK, but if a bathing water site has been designated poor consistently for 5 years, it loses that designation. So one of the good things that I'm pleased that I brought out was we are removing that. So that automatic de-designation then doesn't exist. So the bathing water site stays in place constantly until we can demonstrate that the quality of the water has improved over a period of time. And that is all learning that I have to say I've learned from being your Member of Parliament. Now, I've had a lot of correspondence criticising me as the Water Minister. And do you know what? I'm proud that I have taken on that role in government, because I pitched for it with the Prime Minister, because I wanted to use an issue that was very important here in the constituency to be able to use the learning at a national level. And I'm proud to have done that since November of last year. There is, of course, significantly much more to do. But the progress that has been made over the last since 2010 has been significant, but there is, of course, much more to do. And water companies, or those who pollute, need to be held to account. And the measures that we've brought in place through the Environment Act, that not all MPs voted for, and the Plan for Water, which is about more investment, stronger regulation and tougher enforcement, has absolutely having an impact and having an effect now.
Thank you. Vaz Shabir.
After that impassionate speech by Robbie, everything's hunky-dory and rosy, so I don't know what to say. I don't know what the problem is. I think what we've got to do is we've got to tax the corporations more. They need to take responsibility. These Conservatives and Labour are the parties of corporations now. As Rachel Reeves says, the Labour Party is the party of business, apparently now, not the party of the workers where it used to be. So I think what we've got to do is make sure that they make obscene amount of profits. They should be spending more towards making sure our environment and the people, our environment is safe and secure. And we've got to put, I think Robbie, if he's, after listening to what he's been doing, he's on the right step. So yeah, but we've definitely got to do more, tax them more.
Thank you. John Grogan.
Well, I just want to congratulate two people, really. Firstly, well, collective, the Ilkley Clean River Group, who, as Robbie rightly says, they've led this campaign, not just here in Yorkshire, but they've had impact across the country. And they first came to see me, I think, in a surgery in about 2017 and explained this problem of sewage going into our rivers in huge amounts. And then together we decided to go for the first bathing status, as you mentioned, Robbie. And that then, if you've got the bathing status, that then forces the government, forces the regulators to take action. And that action has been taken in Ilkley. It's still quite a lot to do, by the way, but it's definitely improved things. And you, Robbie, you're quite right. You should take some pride in the fact that then you encouraged this as a minister, other communities to take the same steps. But we shouldn't need to go through this method of declaring bathing status to get sewage out of our rivers. The water companies have a legal obligation not to discharge except for in the most exceptional circumstances, which you'd imagine to be about 3 or 4 times a year. And they must be held to those legal responsibilities. I actually think, Robbie, you mentioned several regulators. I think there's a case for having one powerful regulator covering the finances, covering the environment, to hold them to account and make sure that in the next few years they do get rid of sewage out of our rivers. And I think for some of them, you look particularly at Thames, but there may be others as well, who may not be able to do it, given the fact that they have involved in all sorts of financial manoeuvrings over the decades, and they may have to hand their licences in back to the public, and that may happen. But whatever structure we have, it has to be a priority over the next government. But by the end of it, we have held the water companies to their legal responsibilities, and that sewage, not just in Ilkley, but in Keighley, where this has been less as a focus, but where there's more sewage going into the rivers in Keighley than there is in Ilkley. Throughout Yorkshire, throughout the country, we've got to put a stop to this practice of putting sewage into our rivers.
Andrew Judson.
Yep, I honestly don't think I can add anything to that. I think there should be more accountability, and the water board companies should be made to invest into more capture and storage, and be held accountable for what they do. And any problems, they pay for it, not us, the taxpayer. Yeah.
Right. Next, a question from Safer Ashraf. And sorry, I should have given you advance warning, but I will now do that for Anna Scott. You're coming up next after this one. So you don't need to run, it's fine.
Myself and many other students commute long distances to receive a better quality education because the 3 secondary schools that we have in Keighley are underperforming. How will you address the issues of education and ensure quality education for all?
Okay, thank you. Hang on. Just stay there a moment. Okay, Safer did put in her additional information that she is a pupil in Year 12. So I think, interestingly, that puts you at the age where you won't be allowed to vote in this election, but if some parties are considering the rules changing for that. But we said we would, as long as people lived in the constituency, they don't actually have to be eligible to vote to be able to ask the questions. So let's give this a shuffle. And Andrew Judson, you're up again. Yep. So you don't get just to agree with the previous speaker this time. Not this time, no. So how would you address the issues of education and ensure quality education for all?
It's got to be investment. It's got to be investment in the school system. Now, as it is, I am chair of governors at 2 primary schools in Keighley. Being on Keighley Town Council, I'm also appointed to another school in Keighley, so I'm on 3 boards in Keighley. So education's important. I really think it needs more investment. There's too many teachers that are leaving because of conditions, and I think them conditions need to improve. I wouldn't be arrogant enough to tell you that I know all the answers about this one, but I do think investment needs to be done in, and I think we need to increase the amount of teachers we're going to get, which isn't an easy task. Biggest problems I tend to find is with the special educational needs teachers. They are under so much pressure and so much stress. A lot of them are taking time off because they are just very, very ill with it. So I think we need more support for the educational system, and I think we need more investment.
Thank you. Robbie Moore.
Well, this is a really important question because education is obviously the most important thing to give anyone the best start in life. And let's keep it local. So in Keighley, we are in an unfortunate position where we have secondary schools over in Keighley that are not of the standard that I would expect in terms of Ofsted ratings and where they rank. And we need to make sure that we're working with them to bring them up to level. The academisation system is working. But there are certain challenges, particularly where you get to post-16 education, which is why I raised this specifically over the last 4 years with the Department for Education, and why we're putting investment into the rolling out, for example, of a new sixth form that is going to be built in Keighley to offer more of that academic offering to those students in Keighley and the wider area. Now that funding has been secured, and now we're going to be working at speed to make sure that that new sixth form college is built in Keighley. In addition to that, the skills agenda is incredibly important. Now, I feel that under the Blair and Brown years, there was too much focus on everyone must go to university. And the skills and the technical and vocational-based qualifications were seen as second-rate to something that was more of an academic standing. And we lost our polys, we lost our technical-based colleges, which is why I think it's really important that we bring that skills offering back to the forefront, which is why the government has invested so much in apprenticeships. We've had the highest amount of apprenticeships that have rolled out since 2010. We've introduced T-levels to provide a different offering to post-16. So A-levels, academic qualifications, or T-levels, technical qualifications. And which is why I've also secured funding in Keighley for a new skills hub for those of the adult age, or a new manufacturing, engineering and tech hub that is also going to be built in Keighley, or a new robotics hub, which is also going to be built in Keighley, working with our local businesses. So over the last 4.5 years, I've done a huge amount to guarantee that there's a government investment going into this constituency to address the skills agenda, to address the academic qualifications and raising that bar when it comes to the sixth form provision. And if I'm lucky enough to be re-elected, I want to make sure that now that money has been secured, that is going to be spent on making sure that those premises are built. And the final thing I just want to say is it's important that not only are we having the facilities, but the teaching staff are supported as well. We've recruited 27,000 new teachers since 2010, but we need to make sure that we're going above and beyond that. And why we have invested more in our schools. The per pupil funding has increased for secondary and primary schools since this administration. And we are determined to go further. And that's why also we are putting more money into childcare provision as well, right at that early years. 30 days free childcare provision for those aged 9 months up to going into school. And that is trying to give those youngest people the best start in life, right the way through their academic schooling, up to the choice and the opportunities that they have beyond secondary school.
Thank you. Dominic Atlas.
I care very deeply about the educational system and have for a very long time. 100 years ago, phones were huge, massive, could hardly carry them. Cars were completely different from they are now. 100 years ago, the schooling system was exactly the same. It hasn't changed one bit. You come into school, you sit in straight lines like you would do if you're working in a factory or a mill, and you learn to read and write, and it's not inclusive. There are so many different types of learning styles now that are desperately needing to escape and be learned and taught. There is many, many more special educational needs children coming into our world, and they are not being given the best start in life because it is a wrong system that is still teaching kids the same way they taught 100 years ago. You could talk as much as you want about the funding. You could talk as much as you want about getting the teachers into the schools to teach these kids, but nothing is going to change until we change the curriculum completely to make it so that the children out there that need and have different learning styles have their equal right to learn properly.
Thank you. John Grogan.
A few things local and national. First thing, national. The early years, which has implications locally, particularly in Keighley. The early years are so, so important. The years up to 6 and 7. Many kids' futures is already almost counted out by that stage if they get off to a bad start. We need investment in places like Keighley where so much talent goes to waste. We need more nursery provision, and we're going to do that in empty primary schools. free breakfast clubs, so kids in Keighley go to school not hungry, and that is a big problem for many kids and so on as well in Keighley. So that would be the first stage. And Sure Start, that was one of the greatest achievements of a Labour government. It's not in our manifesto for the early years, but I've been talking to Tracy Brabin about it, the Mayor of West Yorkshire, about how we can have some pilots to try and bring that back. So that's the early years. Then there's challenges, as Robbie says, different challenges in Keighley and Ilkley at 16 to 18. I support a sixth form college in Keighley because I would like to see buses coming into Keighley with students coming in rather than many of them going out into North Yorkshire or into Halifax. So I think that's something that could be something excellent in Keighley. Unfortunately, the number of apprenticeships has gone down in recent years. Much of the apprenticeship levy that is levied on big firms has not been spent, so we want that to be more flexible so it can be shorter courses at Keighley College as well. Here in Ilkley, the big problem is going to be of secondary school places. Ilkley Grammar is pretty full. Many of the teachers tell me there it is sometimes it's difficult to get around. There's so many students there, and that's one thing that I would want to discuss with Bradford Council and Ilkley Grammar. Previously, a couple of years ago, they had a plan to have a sixth form college in Ilkley and have that allied with the Ilkley Grammar, but certainly something will have to be done in the next decade on numbers. And then teachers, just a couple of quick things at the end. I'm from a family of teachers. Both of my late parents were teachers. We've got to assist teachers more. We've got to give them more time to prepare lessons. We've got to reward them better. And Ofsted, we've got to get rid of the just excellent pass and fail. We've got to have a school report card for schools when they are inspected, and not just have a system which causes so much tension to our teachers and gives them some of the mental health problems, which in some cases has led to suicide. We must have proper reports on schools, but it has to be more of a comprehensive report card.
Thank you. So, Vaz Shabir.
Yeah, some really good points made by John there. I actually agree with a lot of what you've said there, John. Education is actually very, very important to me as a qualified teacher and a family of qualified teachers. I'm one of 7 siblings, and all of us are qualified teachers. My wife is a senior leader in a school, and my twin brother is a headmaster. So one of the things I think what the young lady said was about the schools in Keighley. Now, sadly, the schools in Keighley produce perpetual failure. British, white, working-class kids, British Pakistanis, and British Bengalis do worse at school than any other people. So in Keighley in particular, they leave with the least amount of GCSEs and end up having the least options or prospects. So hence why the schools in Keighley don't attract the best teachers. In most teachers, 50% of them leave the profession before they get to M5, which is the first 5 years of teaching. Can you imagine the cost of that? Then you have to replace them with other teachers. There's a massive shortage in it. And I agree, I think there's a system whereby primary school teachers get paid exactly the same as sixth form teachers. There's no incentive to, just not going to get, I know it's a vocation, but actually you want to incentivize teachers by paying them more, by coming into these schools, because they will need to work a lot harder than going to a product of a Conservative government initiative, which I'm bitterly disappointed does not exist anymore, which is assisted places. Now, my parents obviously came as immigrants and didn't have that much money, but under a great policy, if you were to take an entrance exam at Bradford Grammar School, and if you scored high enough, they would go to the poorest areas, and I, along with my brothers, were given a wonderful opportunity by being an old Bradfordian and then going on and actually adding great to society because we all became educated. But these young kids in Keighley don't have that option anymore. They don't have that option anymore, and the reason why that young lady who came here so eloquently said, the reason why she is having to leave and go to other places is because simply we don't have the right staff, we don't have the right funding, and we don't have the right aspirations.
Thank you, Vaz Shabir. So, advance notice to Elizabeth Hall that you will be the question after this one, which is from Anna Scott.
Good evening. This is to everybody. How will you improve suicide prevention in our area? My daughter died by suicide 7 years ago, and I haven't seen any improvement in local services since then. Also, from where I'm standing, there's no support for people bereaved by suicide. What will you do to change this?
Thank you, Anna. Sorry, but one of you is going to have to be the first one to respond to this. Andrew Judson.
Thank you.
What do you say to Anna?
I'm very sorry for your loss. I don't even think I could answer that. I really couldn't. I think, I'll be honest. I think what young ones are struggling with, and I think one of the problems we've got with the young ones is they're never taught to fail. Everything's been allowed to happen. They can go to sports day, everybody wins. They go to various other things, everybody wins. I think when you learn to fail, you learn to understand what it feels like to not get that first job, to not get that boyfriend or that girlfriend, or to split up from that boyfriend or girlfriend. I think it's so difficult to understand what goes on in some young person's mind. I am not the person to answer that, but I just think it's a really difficult subject. I really do.
Thank you, Andrew Judson. Vaz Shabir.
I think I'm obviously very sorry to hear your loss, and I think there's got to be a taboo taken away from this. We've got to be able to talk about suicide a lot more. It is, and I think right now there's a taboo around the situation. I think young people are going through so many things that they don't always find the avenue, or there's definitely not enough investment in mental health to begin with. And bereavement is certainly something that needs to have more investment. We need to have bodies who can help people to deal with that. I had a friend of mine, actually, so I've been through, I had a very good friend of mine who lived in East Morton, in this very constituency, from Bradford Grammar School, a very accomplished young man. I'll mention his name, Oliver Lee, BFG as I used to call him. And he used to catch a train across flats. I used to catch it at Keighley, used to go to school with him. In fact, we used to sit together. Had a wonderful life in all intents and purposes. He became a pilot. He used to do the flights from Dublin to Belfast. He ended up getting a better job, and he ended up, the flight that he used to fly, the co-pilot, unfortunately, it crashed and they perished along with some. And he said, if I was there, I could have done something. So it just reminded me of Ollie actually just now. But and he was back in 2011, and he just couldn't cope with it. And he was found. He committed suicide at home in East Morton. But
Can I just stop you there?
Yeah.
We try not to use that negative language surrounding suicide because it implies that it's a crime.
That's certainly not a crime. Certainly not.
Just to say committed suicide.
Sorry, yes, that certainly wasn't my intention. I'm glad to hear it, because I only remember him fondly, and you just give me an opportunity to remember him. But I think we do need to have these conversations, and like I said, we need to be able to speak to people who've been affected like yourselves, and you know, people need to have that forum.
Thank you, Vaz Shabir. Dominic Atlas.
First of all, sorry for your loss, like everyone else has said so far. I lost my dad to suicide 2 Decembers ago, so I understand your pain. And there is a massive taboo and incorrect thinking around suicide, where there isn't really an opportunity to talk about it, and you feel like if you do talk about it, you're going to get, sanctioned, or no one wants to know. They'll just shove you away and try to give you some medication to make you feel better. There's no real areas where you can go and talk about your feelings and how you feel freely. In Keighley and Ilkley, there is a desperate need for them safe spaces for people who do feel the lowest of the low, and where they feel the only way out is to do that, to talk and understand each other and help each other through it, which is something that I am involved with in Keighley. I attend a Let's Talk About It Man's group, where we try to support each other and gain confidence for each other. The same could be done for women and children in schools, because I do feel like that the suicide rate is going up in younger people. And you are right, there is no support. I received no support when my dad passed away.
Sorry to hear that.
It brought the family together, which was nice to see after a long time away. But apart from that, it was just one of them things. It happened, I got told about it, and I was expected to suck it up. And this is one of the reasons why I attend that man's group, because it's a way of talking in a safe space. And that is definitely 100% what needs happening. More safe spaces, and not to be thrown aside by doctors. If you go to get help about that, I go to the doctors all the time, and it's always on the question: have you got any suicidal thoughts? Why does that matter? If I say yes, are you going to give me some tablets to make me feel better? And if I say no, there's no real structure to suicide prevention, and there desperately needs to be.
Thank you, Dominic Atlas. Robbie Moore.
Hi Anna, and good to see you again, because I remember the event that I came to, that you kindly invited me up at Haworth, at the church there. And I learnt a lot from that event, because this was an event which was about bringing people together who were in the same position as yourself. And it enabled people to talk about the challenges that they were going through, having lost a very close loved one. But I learnt a lot from that event, in that I don't think we're getting it right. I do not think we are getting this huge challenge of suicide right. There is a huge amount of work to do around awareness. There is a huge amount of work to do with making sure that the way in which individuals, whether it's the loved ones or those that are connected, are dealing with it and are getting the right levels of support. We can talk about investment, but actually I think it's about creating the space, and by space I mean time that is associated with that. So if you go to have an appointment, that there is dedicated time that is allocated to whether you're meeting with your GP or another to specifically talk around that, and that support groups like the one that I came to with you are supported financially, because actually sharing experiences, and that was one of the things that I learned when we were talking about it, was actually just as valuable as anything else. And it got me thinking, when I came to that event, I read a book about green prescriptions and getting outdoors. And there was a lot of shared learning that was done from, we all went through the challenge of the COVID pandemic together. But one thing that we all learned, I think, with that was the fact of how important green spaces are and getting out in the outdoors. And I think that there's a lot of work to do. I do not think as a government we are getting it quite right at the moment. And I think that if we're able to put a lot more on awareness, investment of course, but allowing organisations that are doing good work to be better supported, so that we can better ensure that those who have gone through, those that loved ones have lost individuals or friends or family through suicide, that they get the support and the attention and actually the love that they need.
Thank you. John Grogan.
I too obviously would want to express my condolences and also my admiration at your bravery in asking the question. The statistics on young people's suicides are truly alarming, and I would just want to make one suggestion that is in the Labour manifesto but is in other manifestos as well, and that is to provide much more mental health support in our schools, in every school, to have someone at least part of the time whose prime role is providing that support. And also in youth clubs and hubs as well, which we want to expand to make sure that that level of support is there, so there is someone trying to spot the signs of young people and children in distress and trying to provide advice and trying to provide help at a very early stage.
Thank you, John Grogan. Thank you, Anna, for your question. Right, Elizabeth Hall and Sylvia Walker, you will be after Elizabeth.
Hello. There are hundreds of children in Ilkley schools whose families rely on free school meals and donations during the school holidays, and 4 million children living in poverty in the UK. What will you do to lift children out of poverty and improve their life chances?
Thank you, Elizabeth. Judson. I don't know if like red Lego bricks are heavier than the other colours we're discovering. As John keeps
a bit like me. Yeah,
nice.
right, okay. To get children out of poverty. See, this is what happens when you put me right on the spot, and then I've got to listen to any other answers first, and I just have to try and wing it, as it were. With the local area, I think... but bearing in mind, don't forget, we are actually sat in the building now that is actually the food bank for Ilkley. So I think to get them out of poverty is one of the reasons that we're doing it in reform is to increase the personal allowance for tax, which will just give people just that little bit more money to actually put into the family coffers, as it were. It might be £1,700, £2,000 a year. So I think by doing that, we're taking it away, because what I see as, what a lot of people would see as the poorest in society are those that are on benefits, where I don't agree. I agree that they're maybe the most vulnerable in society, but they're not the poorest. I think the poorest people are the people that are just on over £16,000, who don't qualify for free school meals, who don't qualify for child benefit. So I think by increasing the tax threshold, it will just allow and just take a little bit more to put people into people's pockets, so they've got a little bit of something. I would also agree with what John says about breakfast clubs and things like that for the schools. We have them in Keighley. And I think making sure that they're fed when they come to school and they can get a more productive day out of it. But I think, from my point of view, I think raising the tax threshold would be a start.
Thank you. Robbie Moore.
I think raising, I mean, this is a really interesting constituency, because there are pockets of deprivation here in Ilkley, and there is much more deprivation over in Keighley and the wider area. And we are constantly seeing families that do struggle, that are either receiving universal credit or not, but still finding it a little bit tough. And the best way of raising society out of poverty is providing opportunities, which is why I have focused so heavily over the last 4.5 years on making sure that this area is getting the level of investment directly from government. So Keighley, which is much more of a deprived area, based on the metrics that are set, has had ring-fenced about £80+ million over the last 4 years to be spent on things that are going to be raising opportunity, whether it is a new skills hub, a manufacturing hub, an engineering hub, a health and well-being hub that's going to be built in Keighley. All of these things to address those challenges that are associated with providing more opportunity to get into the work environment, to provide the young people that want to be able to get the job that they want, to have that offer there, so that they can get the skills, so that they can get into the job market. Because if we have a strong economy at a local level, that is an employer paying a salary and paying and supporting a family. And that is the best way to raise society, by making sure that we've got the best and the strongest economy at a local level, and that those opportunities are available.
Thank you.
Oh. Excuse me, can I sit down? I'm sorry.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
I'm not really good at standing up.
Right, John, I've just pulled the red brick out as you went for that drink of water.
There are 1 million children now in our country who are not relatively poor. They are destitute, in the sense they don't have enough to eat. They're probably not warm most of the day. And that is a national scandal that in a country as rich as ours, that there are those million people. And it will take, we must get to a society where there are no need for food banks. We had it, you know, it's not impossible to organise a society where there is no need for food banks. We had a period after the war, even in post-war austerity and so on and things, where we had a system where we were a more equal society, quite frankly. And that lasted through to the 80s. It was a unique period in our history. And now we're one of the most unequal societies in Europe. And I think it's, in the developed world, it's only the States that is more unequal. So that will mean taxing non-doms. It will mean putting VAT on private school fees. So we can do things like breakfast clubs, which is a start, but it's only a start. So we can go further in time with things like Sure Start. And if I'm on the back benches supporting a Labour government, I know money will be tight. But as soon as we can get growth going, I will be arguing two changes, really, which would help some of the poorest kids in our society. One would be to lift that cap on child benefit for 2 children, because it's not the children's, it's nothing to do with the children, whether it's second or third or fourth child. And it's all the children who suffer, the first and the second suffer, so do that as well. And universal credit, for those of you who are familiar with it, if you are on that benefit, you have to wait 5 weeks to get any money. And we have to have a situation that if you're entitled to that benefit, you get it much more speedily than that. So it's going to be a long, long haul, but I would hope that within a period of government, we could get to the stage, and just a simple thing, that kids are going to school and are not hungry. If we could just achieve that, that would be something.
Thank you. Dominic Atlas.
Well, I'd like to say that I wouldn't like to see any child hungry at all, not just going to school, the dinners, anything like that. The issue is, as a child, I didn't know where my tea were coming from when I was at home. My mum tried her absolute best to provide for me and my other 2 brothers and sisters, and there just wasn't enough money. And the thing is, and again, there's a bit of a stigma around it, is where if you think to yourself, I need help, there's always that scare in the back of my mind, I'm going to lose my children if I ask for help, because the social services are going to rip them straight out of me because I might not be able to provide for my kids. But because of my upbringing, I vowed to myself that my kids will never ever go hungry. And I help the community when I'm doing that as well. During COVID, I knew some people in my school who were much less fortunate than me, so I took them food as often as I could. And the only real way to solve the poverty issue is by... to solve the poverty issue is by making a structured system where parents don't feel like they're going to be stigmatised and lose their kids for just asking for help, because sometimes that's all it needs, is that help. Government, they pay lots of money towards lots of different things, they fund lots of different things, but when the Prime Minister's sitting on so much money, being paid so much money in his salary, and kids are going hungry, I just don't understand that system.
Thank you, Dominic Atlas. Vaz Shabir.
No, there are 1 in 4 children in Keighley actually live in poverty. And that, as John was actually saying, that is scandalous. We as a nation have got one of the 6th biggest economy in the world. And don't be fooled here. This is not because we don't have the money to feed them. We certainly have the money to feed them. We choose not to. We will serve the corporations, and the people with the biggest money are the ones who can lobby politicians, and they will get their thing through. You know, even if we added, it's a small tax to people with investments over £15 million, and many of us could only dream of having such great portfolio of 15 million, we could end child poverty. But unlike John, who's just said somehow the Labour Party is going to change this, well, we don't call him Sir Kid Starver for no reason. He is the man who actually had the opportunity to get rid of the abysmal Tory policy of not giving the third child the child tax credit, and he refused to do that. So it's great for John to say he'll be championing this in the background, but certainly we don't see that radical change happening under the Labour government, which is most likely impending. So I think what we do need to do is be really honest. You know, there are many, many children in our constituency who literally live in poverty. And for many of us sat here, it's almost unfathomable, really. And why is it that in our nation this is happening? And we've got to do something about it. And do not be fooled when they say we don't have money. We've got money to bomb kids abroad, but we don't have money to feed our own kids at home. And that is the nature of the moment.
Thank you, Vaz Shabir. Right, we have come to our final question of the evening. Sylvia Walker.
Good evening. Our country is suffering catastrophic nature and biodiversity loss. What will your party firmly commit to save our wonderful wildlife, including bees, butterflies, trees, and their environment?
Thank you, Sylvia. You can stay there or go back, it's up to you. Robbie Moore.
Thank you. So, a really good question, and let's turn the clock back. In 2010, 40% of all energy produced in this country came from burning coal. Now, it's less than 1%. In fact, some days we don't even burn coal to produce electricity. So we put a huge amount of money into renewables, solar, wind, anaerobic digestion, geothermal, and now I support the rollout of nuclear to make sure, alongside renewables, that we are reducing our reliance on fossil fuels for the energy that we need and the consumption that we need. When it comes to biodiversity, we are doing a huge amount. With coming out of the Common Agricultural Policy, we've been able to develop environmental land management schemes that specifically pay farmers to put land aside for public good, specifically getting paid to put land in a sustainable farming incentive, a countryside stewardship scheme, a landscape recovery scheme, all, whether it be fluorescently enhanced wild margins, or whether it is to put land aside to make sure that our pollinators have got the best chance to do what they need to do to make sure the food that we produce is as good as it can be. But we also are making sure that we are meeting our tree planting target, making sure that we are planting the right trees in the right locations. But this comes down to personal responsibility as well, because the government can put in as much of your taxpayers' money into subsidy-related schemes for our farmers, or to make sure that we're planting schemes or planting hedges subsidised by the taxpayer. But also, we have our own personal responsibility to make sure that in our own environments we are doing as best as we can to make sure that we're doing our own thing for biodiversity and environmental net gain. And that starts in the household, through recycling, through making sure that we're doing the right things in our gardens as well. So I just feel that we've made a good amount of progress, but making sure that we reach net zero by 2050 is our ultimate aim. But we've got to be pragmatic on how we're doing that. And that's why the government announced some of the measures in reducing and moving back the deadlines from 2030 to 2035 for replacing cars or for replacing boilers in your household. But the end goal of net zero by 2050 is still there.
Thank you, Robbie Moore. Andrew Judson, biodiversity.
I would, first of all, abolish net zero. I don't think it'll work. I don't think we're ready for it. If it needs to be a long time before we're ready for that, I would back nuclear. I would not be having onshore wind farms, the massive, huge ones. There's one that's wanting to try and put up in Calderdale now. The devastation to the wildlife in that area, the raptors, the ground nesting birds, is just incalculable. It should not be there. There's other ways to go forward with this. And I think nuclear is the way forward. Now, I have cats, I have dogs, I have 6 horses. So I love my animals. I want to make sure they're all okay. I would increase the funding to the farmers, definitely, for like what Robbie said, putting land aside for pollinators and things. We'd also be looking at putting a design code or in with building development, making sure that they actually fulfil their responsibilities of making sure they've got a diverse ecosystem within their developments. At the moment, you could take down 20 massive oak trees, but put in 50 metres of hedgerow, and you've covered the diversity. It's not right. It takes years for them to grow again. So I think developments, a lot of housing developments have got to have green spaces involved with them. We can't let developers dictate to us how they do things. We need to have a plan in place for developers and for all of the land to say, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to keep it diverse, but we need to, if not abolish, certainly slow down on net zero. We need CO2 in the air. It's the gas of life. I don't believe that it is. It's the gas of life. Come on, be honest about it. We put out less than 1%. All we're doing is ship it around the world and say that we've done a wonderful job. We haven't. We haven't at all. So I think going forward from net zero type, it should be more of the carbon capture, and we need to go along with nuclear. So that's the energy side of it out of the way. But from a wildlife point of view, I think we have to have design codes for developments. I think we need to have more funding for the farmers, and I think we need to really, really look at onshore energy, as in wind farms, to see if we can move them to an area that's not going to be such a big problem.
I think it's, you know, Ilkley has voted Green locally, and we do have a Green candidate. So it's a bit of a shame that whenever I go for Hustings, the Green candidate never shows up. Because this is a massive issue, and especially a massive issue for the youngsters as well. I get a lot of young people who really care about the environment, because when we are long gone, they will still have to live on this earth, and they care more about it. And I think I was really disappointed when, I'm sure many of you were, when there was a pledge given by the Labour government, Labour Party, who will be the new government, let's just be honest. And when they basically said they weren't going to invest 28 billion in it again, it wasn't costed. This is an investment, and there will be a return in investment, because the new technology, the green technology, is actually going to get us a new industry. It's the way forward. I'm not stuck in the way like Andrew. I think this is the future. It's going to protect the environment, but actually it's good for our economy as well. So we might have to borrow more for the moment, but I think in the long term it's going to create jobs. It's going to give the youngsters what they need, and it's going to give a better environment and a better future for all.
Thank you, Vaz Shabir. John Grogan.
I'm always a big fan of the old, I think it was an old Green slogan originally, that you should think global but act local. And we're very, very lucky here in Ilkley with the number of organisations. I think the Yorkshire Rewilding Trust is based here in Ilkley. There's the Friends of Ilkley Moor. There's the wonderful diversity on the moor, which has to be cherished and protected. I'm thinking of the peat bogs and the peat land and so on in particular. So I think there's a lot we can do here in Ilkley. Just as we led on sewage, we can lead on biodiversity, I think, and set an example. But nationally as well, the Labour Party has plans for, I think, 3 new forests, 5 new riverside walks, which would be based on preserving nature and encouraging biodiversity. So I think there's a lot we can do as a nation, but here in Ilkley, we're so blessed and so lucky that we should lead the way.
I hate to think about when the Yorkshire Dales is going to be renamed the Yorkshire Dales Estate, when they decide they want to pull it all down and build houses on it. The Yorkshire Party have 2 leaders, Bob and Simon. Bob is a doctor in renewable and sustainable energy. He has wrote numerous foundation degrees on that subject. And Simon has rewilded 18 acres of land himself out of his own pocket over the past 3 years. You don't hear about that because we don't care about plastering it all over the newspapers and over the internet saying, look what we've done. They do that off their own backs because they think it's the right thing to do. And with a Yorkshire Party candidate, I am exactly the same. I teach my kids how to make hedgehog houses and little mini places for wildlife to live in, and we go around and we put them in St Ives in Keighley and things like that. Not having a lot of money myself, I can't dream big. I can only teach my kids the right thing to do. But being in government and having a party that is very, very strongly believes in rewilding our land and making it sustainable for the future so that generation after generation after generation can enjoy the beautiful scenery of Yorkshire is the best way forward.
Oh, thank you, Sylvia. I'm on again now. Excellent. Thank you. Sorry, I realised earlier, I said and then forgot to go back to, any of the questions that didn't go to you, if you've got anything bursting that you need to say, no, fine, I just didn't want to not give you that opportunity. In which case, closing speeches, you get 2 minutes to make people want to vote for you, basically. And because I feel I thought Lego bricks would be random, but I feel like they keep coming out in the same order. So to make sure it is definitely not me, I am going to go, right. Could you pick a brick out of there to see who is going first? And Andrew Judson.
Right, I can refer to this now. So, 2 minutes then, I bet I can start quickly. So we'll miss that bit straight away. What can I do for you? Well, for starters, I can hold the Labour-run Bradford Council to account for continually ignoring the wishes of the residents of Ilkley. Whether it be the closing of Golden Butts or a blanket installation of speed bumps we've already touched on. Around schools and residential homes, I understand, but everywhere? And against the wishes of Ilkley, it's just wrong. So let's face it, Golden Butts is prime building land. So it's not a money saving, it's a money making scheme. Bradford Council is going to make money on that. Bradford sees Ilkley as full of millionaires. I've touched on that before. You're all millionaires. Bradford need to get rid of that preconception about Ilkley. You can only sell the family silver once. If they carry on stripping everything you've got and selling it, where are we going to be? Residents may be asset rich, but sometimes cash poor. And let's not forget, as I've said, we're in the building where it holds food banks for the poor. Ilkley will struggle with massive tax hikes, and that's expected under Labour, with the council tax. What's next? I've referred to the ULEZ. That's what's going to come. Do you want that in your area? It's not going to work. Housing development's going up. It seems to be without improving the local infrastructure, local amenities, getting overwhelmed, schools oversubscribed, doctor's appointments are just getting worse. In Keighley, I'm in the process of getting a government-funded housing needs assessment on the area of Keighley and the surrounding villages, so all of them, on the basis that we can then stop development and then an informed decision can be made when planning applications are submitted. That, I think, is important. We can't just let them keep throwing up these houses. I think also with crime, we'll just touch on that quickly because I'm running out of time. There needs to be a manned police station in Ilkley. A permanent accessible police station in the heart of any town is essential to make residents feel safe. So I think that needs to be done. One more page, only a little one, honest. Securing their time. I will lobby strongly for this. Antisocial behaviour, drug crime and counterline criminality needs a zero tolerance approach by the police. And of course the river, we've talked about that. Other candidates will offer you promises. I will not.
Thank you, Andrew.
Quickly.
Hang on. You pick who's going next, because it can't be your own, eh?
Get me on back now, eh?
Let's see.
Dominic, sorry, mate.
Dominic Atlas, 2 minutes.
Thank you, everyone, for coming this evening. Politicians are liars. And I am not a politician. I'm not trained in it. I am a normal person. I'm a dad. I'm a bus driver. I'm a thorn in my council's side. I want to make sure that we as people of Ilkley and Keighley, Silsden, Worth Valley are represented properly by those people that will not pull the wool over your eyes. I have had the wool pulled over my eyes since I turned 18 and was able to vote. Nothing has really come of anything that any of the two people sat behind me that have sat in the position of that power. They make false promises and tell you that they've secured this and they've secured that. But I tell you what was secured? HS2, and that were cancelled. So nothing is in writing, nothing is guaranteed. The only thing is guaranteed is if we get people back into centralised government that are farmers, bus drivers, butchers, the country will be ran so much better, because those people that are in government at the moment, they've all been trained to be politicians, they've been to school for it, They went to the most prestigious schools of political science and all that stuff, and they failed us time and time again. It's time to get real people back into centralised government. Thank you.
Thank you, Dominic. Take a break. Paul's coming next. And it is Robbie Moore.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you for your participation tonight. Look, if I am lucky enough to be re-elected as your Member of Parliament on the 4th of July, the commitment that I can give to you is focusing on your priorities, making sure that your voice is heard, whether that is holding the local authority to account or the government to account. And hopefully, over the last 4.5 years, you have seen me do that. You have seen me secure money for a new rebuild of the Airedale Hospital, which is going to be built by 2030. You've seen me secure money
excuse me. Hang on, Robbie.
Going...
Sorry. No, let Robbie speak. He gets the 2 minutes, same as everybody else. You get to have your say next week at the ballot box, but don't try to talk over him. Thank you. Sorry, Robbie. Continue.
And you've seen me secure a huge amount of investment into this constituency, whether it be on a new skills hub, a new manufacturing, engineering and tech hub, whether it be putting pressure on the likes of Yorkshire Water with local campaigners to put the amount of investment that they have put into Ilkley, and they are still putting more. The point that I'm making is that I work hard, I graft hard, and I am not shying of working hard for you over the next 4.5 years. You have a clear choice on the 4th of July, somebody that is going to represent you and not be frightened of holding Labour-run Bradford Council to account and not be frightened of pursuing my campaign to get a council that better reflects our local area outside of the Bradford district. And that is not something that I will shy away from. So on the 4th of July, if you want somebody that is not going to be shying away from working hard and being enthusiastic and with amount of energy, because there is plenty more fuel in the tank, vote for me, and I will not be frightened of holding those at a higher level to account.
Thank you, Robbie Moore. Right, John Grogan.
I think someone mentioned at the beginning that this church has been here, was it 1,200 years, 1,300 years? It is only less than the last 100 that all men and women in Ilkley have had the right to vote. 1929, that was achieved for all men and women. And I always think on nights like these, where we're less than a week now from the ballot boxes opening, there was a chap called John Smith, who some of you will remember, who was the Labour leader before Tony Blair. And he tragically died before he could face the electorate. And he spoke at a dinner the night before he died. And he said all that he sought was the chance to serve the nation. And that's what we all are trying to do tonight, to serve our nation. We're just a week away from the ballot boxes opening. Many people have already voted. And all I would say, on top of what I've said before, is that if I am the MP for Keighley and Ilkley, I will seek to bring people together. I will seek to unite, not divide. I will work with people of all political parties. I won't indulge in the blame culture. I will be trying to get results. And some of those results will be on the Ilkley Lido and will be on the tip. And they will be on my desk if I win on the first Monday. But as a country as a whole, I plead with you, we have to take the chance to restore our public services, restore standards in public life, and restore our place in the world.
Thank you. Just to prove it wasn't a fix, there is Vaz Shabir's brick still in there. So the final word to you.
Well, it wasn't fixed, but they are saving the best to last. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why 2024 for me is the year of the independents. Independent candidates are being fielded in almost every single ward that I know in our district, because I speak to them. And there's a reason why. We all know we're sick of the 14 years of Tory austerity. But actually, there are thousands of people who are not enthused by having a Keir Starmer government either. So people have actually left with either choosing Nigel Farage's reform, and actually, as much as I like Andrew, that in itself is loathsome, or we can actually get, what we can actually get is real, independent, local representation, and what we can actually say to all these mainstream parties is, we reject them. We don't believe a vote for Robbie is a vote for Rishi Sunak, the multi-billionaire, millionaire who the poor sod didn't have Sky TV as a kid, as a means. And then we've got Sir Keir Starmer, who I certainly think is in many ways even worse. Because with Rishi, at least you know what you're going to get. With Keir Starmer, he's the one who'll shake your hand and then stab you right in the back. With Sunak, he'll stab you right in the eye. And I much prefer that in many ways. So and for me, I'm not going to shy away from it. A lot of my votes are probably going to come from Keighley. They're going to come from Keighley Central and Keighley East. Because we, as the Muslim population there, are absolutely appalled by the Conservative and the Labour policy in Gaza. And I am standing on a humanitarian level, and I know my time is up. But it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you all. And
thank you, Vaz Shabir. So, a few quick thank yous. Thank you to everybody who submitted a question. Thank you for everybody who came and asked. Thank you all for being here, because it really wouldn't have been worth it to a bunch of empty chairs. Thank you to the tech team who've had to produce something quite different from the requirements of our normal church services, to the people who served the tea and coffee, to keep going fixing my microphone in the middle. Can I also welcome on stage, because he's been there in the corner and we haven't seen him all evening, Richard. Can we have a round of applause for our interpreter? He's had to spend all evening signing policies that he doesn't believe in. Thank you also to Rachel, whom I'm married to, and it was her birthday yesterday. So sorry that, that might perhaps not have been the birthday that you were hoping for. But thank you to all of our candidates. You've been really good at letting us have a chat like this, where we haven't needed to put strict timers on you. You've answered the questions and been generous to each other. I hope to the audience you have found this useful in learning about the candidates and informing your vote. But also what I hope is that you see 5 people here who all are standing because they want to make our constituency, our country, our world a better place, and that you can disagree with their policies or that of the parties they're in, but still see that these are people who are doing this for the right reasons, and that all of them are actually trying to improve our society. So can you all stand up, please? And thank you very much.
Coming this evening, and there's one person who hasn't been thanked, and that is Smilers. He has not just chaired this evening, he put in 75, 80% more of the work to making this hustings happen. Within hours of the general election being called, he emailed round churches together, leaders, and he has been working tirelessly for days and weeks behind the scenes. This hustings would not have happened without him, and it's only right that he had the opportunity to chair this evening. He's left the stage, but let's give him a round of applause so loud he can hear it behind the screen. Smilers, come on up. Take a bow. As we finish tonight, for those who would like to, a short prayer. God of grace and truth, in Jesus you embody your choice of us. Bless all who make choices in this general election. Clothe your people with gratitude, and give those who vote your spirit of wisdom and understanding. Uphold all who stand for election. Preserve their dignity and guide them in the path of integrity. Renew this nation in honour for the stranger, respect for the different, and the cherishing of your world. When all the votes are counted, show us ways to foster the flourishing of all and be a blessing to our neighbours. Amen. Friends, thank you again for coming this evening.